We are Fandom Roulette.
Two nerds with a passion for
History,
video games,
tabletop games,
and, well, really any nerdy stuff that comes into our lives.
While we might not be able to name every ship classification in Star Wars,
Or every Pokemon.
or every spell in the player's handbook,
Well, one of us can.
we're still here to have a good time. Hey everyone, welcome to Fandom Roulette. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And on Fandom Roulette, this is a podcast where we talk about a myriad of nerdy things, including such things as history, video games, tabletop role-playing games, and whatever other nerdy things we feel like talking about at the time. How you doing, Cody?
I am doing well, all things considered. How are you doing?
Yeah, I would put myself in the same spot, you know?
Right.
Sure.
A lot of Witcher 3.
A lot of Witcher 3?
Yeah. Going back to classics. It felt comfortable. I'm
Are
basically
you tossing.
Yeah, I am tossing
coins.
Well, here's the thing. I'm actually hoarding coins now in Witcher 3. I've made so much money on the contracts and have exploited the people of Novigrad and Velen and all that stuff to the point where now I am probably the richest person of the people of The Witcher 3.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
How does Emperor Charles Dance feel about that?
You know, I'm trying to avoid that conversation with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you saying that there's a conversation tree where it's like, now Geralt, you have more money than me, and he's like, God,
he's just
God
like,
damn it.
Shit.
He's like, hey, that's not cool because emperors are supposed to have the most money.
Yeah, like, by law. Well, see, here's the thing, though.
Yeah,
Geralt's a traveler. Like, he doesn't really.
It's true.
I mean, he has to like follow the rules, but like taxes and things like that don't really apply to him in the same way that it does like the residents. So, like, you know, what can you do?
You know, I was asking my friend about that. Like, if Witchers had some like level of diplomatic immunity. Because like I started playing The Witcher 3, so you know,
good.
I'm kind of doing it like I'm playing it in chunks when I get to go and like hang out with them.
Yeah.
So like I'll never finish it.
That's mildly true if you're only playing it in like the short bursts. Because like,
sure,
I think this playthrough
eventually I might have.
Yeah, I think this playthrough I'm like already starting to hit the day amount of time put in, and I'm still only level 20, and I'm like mildly through the main quest. I've mostly been doing the side stuff, and like I haven't played the DLC either, and I know the DLC is basically its own feature-length game, so I'm nowhere near completion on this game at all.
I'll be like an 87-year-old man. I'll be like, I finally did it.
I did it. I finally got to The Witcher. Which one, Dad? 3.
I finally beat the Wild Hunt. And it's like, whoa.
And they're like, oh, wow, that's vintage. We've been playing Witcher 8, the electric boogaloo.
Witcher 8. This time it's in the future, and Geralt fucks.
So,
I mean, he kind of does that in Witcher
Cyberpunk
3,
2077?
I mean, fair.
Yeah.
Enough. Yeah, I mean, hey, it's the same team, right?
Yeah, same guys.
Right? That's what I thought. But yeah, so like, you know, during that like first little mission, like you go into that inn and they're like, oi, innkeeper, what'd you take down like our sigil? And she's like, oh, you know, like Nilfgaard is over there and they're invading. They're like, oh, you should still show all colors. And then like they fight Geralt because like Geralt just shows up. He's like, hi, I'd like a drink, please. And they're like, we don't like your kind around here, witches. And then they're like 5 minutes later, like, so anyway, like if you want more information, you should go talk to the Nilfgaard soldiers over there. And I was like, wait a second, I'm confused now. Like, and so my friend kind of explained like they kind of have diplomatic immunity in the sense that it's like they're not necessarily members of any like nation. And so I was like, but like, why are these like 4 like rando goons just like, hey, so anyway, yeah, we understand that you're looking for your amnesia ex-wife Yennefer, The last time we saw her, like, she was hanging out over over with the Nilfgaardians. So you should probably like head over there. And they also like it was weird because they dropped their English accent for that bit.
Oh yeah, it was really. They're like, oh, you actually should just go to the south over there by Nilfgaard. They'll patch you up real good, and then you're like, wait, what happened to your accent? It's like, oh, we only do that for peasants, see, because crikey, god damn it, can't even think of.
Oi, you know it's oi. They also start every sentence with oi.
Yes,
they're like,
well, sometimes depending on how angry they get, oi gets added into various like parts of the sentence as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. So it's like they'd be like oi. So anyway, like it's really hard to understand Cockney accents. So like I'm just gonna talk to you like real quick in a nice like mid-Atlantic New York style accent. So you can like find that like real nice, real easy, and then it's like, oh, thank you so much for your help. They're like, oh yeah, it's no problem, Gov. No,
well, so in half the game, it's like, oi, you witches, you got cat eyes, I fucking hate you, and then they just start attacking you most times, and especially if you go the magic route, because Geralt can like do the cool the Jedi mind trick stuff. And like if anyone sees you do that, they're like, oh, you using magic, let's murder you. And then you kill them because obviously, fucking peasants with like, 2x4s aren't gonna fucking kill an elite like hunter.
Yeah, it's never once happened to me.
Never once.
Yeah, no, so it was something I was kind of like fascinated by, where I was like, huh.
Yeah, because they live in a fucking rundown castle in the middle of fucking nowhere that's hidden.
Yeah, but I mean, more so just the fact that they're like, yeah, we hate Nilfgaard, but also they have a lot of good information if you like want to roll over there. And hang out
it's
with
that
them
weird dynamic of like the fact that like witchers are like, yeah, we were born out of like crazy magic and like a bunch of stuff that people don't like anymore, because like at least by the time Witcher 3 comes around, magic has a pretty bad name in all regards because of a certain faction that you haven't met yet. Sure. So like when they think of the Witchers, they're like, oh, they were born by wizards and sorcerers, so like they're obviously bad
and we fucking hate those guys.
Right, so like you get a lot of that, but also they're the only ones that can like kill the monsters that just like hang out next door. Like, oh shit, there's a noon wraith like literally 2 steps away from my house. I fucking hate you, but take my money and kill that thing for me, please.
Yeah,
like you do. Yeah. But I don't hate the exterminator when they come over.
Oh, that exterminator knows what they did.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah, I've been watching movies that I've watched many times.
What? Hey, no.
It's a good movie.
What is a good movie?
It's Mask of Zorro.
It's
on Netflix.
I'll be honest with you. I knew you were gonna say that because I saw your Facebook post. So like,
yeah, man, it's so fresh in my brain. I was like, this is a good movie.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that movie came out in like 98. I think I saw it in like 2000, so I was like 10, and I was like, oh, is this the best movie ever made? And I was like, and then I watched it at age 30, and I was like, oh yeah, it is the best movie ever made. Good job, 10-year-old Joe.
Yeah.
You knew quality when you saw it.
Right.
There's like a scene where like he pulls his sword out of the sheath and like it catches the sun perfectly, and it just like the sun runs down like his blade, and I was like, ooh, check that out. That was neat. That was nice.
They must have spent like hours trying to get that exact moment to align.
Yo, yeah, perfect. I know, right? Like,
because I can't imagine
they in the movies
CG'd that.
Yeah, no, like, so yeah, just like imagine like, okay, so you have to stay in like this spot, and like at this precise moment you have to pull out your sword just so, and I would be like, cool, let's do this shit. Movies are cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, I should talk about history at least a little bit, right?
Right. I mean, hey, we're a podcast for the time being about a myriad of nerdy things. So hit me up with that sweet, good bummer of a history section.
That's true. Yeah, so I was like thinking about this like a lot,
Yeah.
yeah, so this is gonna date the episode like a lot.
Well, when
Um
hasn't we dated it?
that's true.
Wow, that was a sentence. God.
That's true. Yeah, you know,
You'd think
so
English was my third language. It's my
yeah.
first. It's my first.
My first is Witcher.
Hmm. Well, that's not fair. That's
And like
that's like 5 good grunts and then fuck and shit.
Henry Cavill like just looked up right there. He was like, I understood
He's
exactly what you said.
Yeah.
He was like, whoa.
His Witcher senses were tingling.
Yeah. Oh boy. So yeah, the world's kind of fucking scary right now.
Yeah.
And like during this time of social distancing and you know potentially self quarantining and all of this stuff. Yeah, I wanted to like find something like some nice stories.
Yeah.
Some nice histories. So for this week, I kind of like went to one that I knew was like a slam dunk, you know.
Right. The one that you know that's good and filled with cheer.
Surprise, surprise. It's sometimes more difficult to find like really truly nice uplifting stories in history.
Sure.
And I'm going to do my best to like find some more, you know, like really try to bring things to be like, "Oh yeah, that's right." Like the world is cool and good and shit. So yeah, so this week we're going to be talking about this is going to be something kind of like wild because it's March, but I'm going to be talking about Christmas.
Oh yeah, stand back Christmas in July. It's fucking Christmas in March.
It's Christmas in March time, baby.
Yeah. Ooh.
So we're gonna be talking a little bit about an event that's known as the Christmas Truce. So we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back into the Wayback Machine.
We got to keep going back. We hit MySpace, and that's just a mess. Keep going.
So anyway, in World War One,
good time.
Yeah, right. So in America, World War One, is like kind of seen as this like weird little historic footnote.
Sure. Yeah.
Mainly because we came in very, very late. And when we got there, like basically no one was sure what to do with us. So it was a lot of like, hey, we're here to help. And they're like, oh, just go over there. Things like that. And so in like America, like we don't think about World War One all that often, I don't think. But to Europe, that is still the big one. In a lot of ways, it's bigger than World War II. The period after World War One is sometimes referred to as like the silent generation. And to Britain, France, and Germany and other countries, this thing was just super like long and slogging, and it felt unending. And the other thing about it was that like there was aspects of it where people weren't entirely or incredibly sure like why it even happened in the first place. You can kind of see this in some more tongue-in-cheek things that were written about it. There's a book that kind of comes out, if not during, right after the end of World War One, called Not So Quiet, which is about a group of female ambulance drivers from Great Britain who would drive soldiers around. All Quiet on the Western Front it has some moments where the author really, you know, questions like why did this even happen in the first place and things like that. And it wasn't even like just the fighting. The trenches themselves were these just like kind of like really nasty, grody things that, you know, people could get really sick and things like that. But this is kind of the setting for this this good story, this nice story. So in December of 1914, which is relatively early in the war, it's during the first year. By some estimates, over 100,000 British, French, and German soldiers put aside their weapons and bonded together in fraternization and fellowship. So to some sources, this began in a northern trench, in a northernmost trench, or in a northern-ish trench along the Western Front. And basically, by many accounts, it began. Both sides were sitting in their trenches, and the German troops started singing Christmas carols. And apparently it was quiet enough that, and they were close enough that the British soldiers heard them singing this. And so they responded with some Christmas carols of their own. And so they all started kind of singing as one voice, one group, one unit. According to some, there was like a brass band that started playing, and things like that. Now, it wasn't uncommon for, truces to be called for various reasons. But in this case, they decided to attempt a truce just in the spirit of Christmas. And so by all accounts too, the next day, a group of Germans began to start walking into no man's land, which was the section between the trenches. And one of the reasons it was called no man's land was there were kind of these like arbitrary lines drawn that once you crossed it, it was basically like free range to start firing. Not necessarily because of like etiquette or anything like that, but it was because you were literally in range of different weapons. So the British Allied soldiers were initially very worried about this because, there were soldiers walking in, but one man popped his head up and he saw that not only were the Germans walking across slowly, they were walking across unarmed. And so basically they decided that they were also going to drop their weapons and kind of join them in the middle of this no man's land. And so by all accounts, there were stories being told, they were exchanging food and drink and cigarettes. They were playing games of soccer in the middle, like, big, massive games of soccer. And they were singing songs with one another. There was an account of one soldier who made a deal with a German lieutenant to take his buttons because he was a collector. And then another, met a German translator who grew up in the same town, but was, German. So he went home to fight for his country. And now, over the next few years, like, these truces began to lessen. They started to become few and far between. Apparently, in 1915, there was another attempt at a Christmas truce that was not necessarily quite as friendly with one another. But, at the very least, they stopped fighting for a couple of days for the holiday. But as the war got longer and more intense, it was much more difficult to pull this off. And, there were also reports of higher-ups in both militaries that were not incredibly happy that these, like, lower infantry soldiers were making these decisions to, work with one another. But for one night and one full day, these set of soldiers who were enemies, who were fighting against one another, became friends. And really the only reason that they were enemies is that someone else, kind of told them that they were enemies. Now I've heard conflicting stories about what happens next, and I've seen these in various places as well. Some claim that the both sets of troops that kind of started the truce were moved elsewhere along the lines, in some kind of hope that, if they would, start fighting again because they weren't going to fight the people across from them because they had shared this day together. That one's probably like a little bit more apocryphal than anything else. Because it seems like these truces kind of started to spread throughout that. But in those moments, they were reminded of their humanity with one another. They were people, the people across from them were not enemies, and they just happened to be people that they were fighting, but they all kind of remembered that they were human beings. First and foremost. and I like this story. Obviously it happens early in World War One, and it seems like over time it starts being more of a fantasy that something like this even existed. But in those moments, in those early years, they it was a story of finding the humanity in one another, and that we're all part of this this thing together. And eventually World War One ended, and then World War Two happened, and things like that. But for that 24 plus hour period, these were two groups of people looking at one another, and they were not Germans and English. They were people. And so yeah, it's something I kind of wanted to talk about today a little bit, and tell a little bit about the story of people kind of putting aside the sword to share a little bit of friendship and fellowship. So that is the story of the 1914 Christmas truce. Like I said, I'm going to try to find more kind of upbeat stories for the time being. I've plenty of doom and gloom and gore and nastiness, but for a little while, let's be positive here, and let's tell stories to like lift up the human spirit a little bit. So, any questions, Cody?
Gosh, questions? I mean,
yeah.
So was this one particular isolated incident, or did this end up becoming, or because like it almost feels impossible to imagine people in this big, effing war, we're talking World War One. This thing spanned over, it was a very big war, and then this one incident of people like coming together is like so cool. And I'm just curious if it was like, did this reach quote unquote history books because it may have not been one isolated incident, but rather like several accounts of like similar like events during World War One? Or
sure, it sounds like there was a little bit, there was a fair amount of spread. Like, I don't know how necessarily widespread it became.
Sure.
There's also some accounts too that there was similar things that happened on the Eastern Front against Russia and things like that.
Okay.
And it wasn't unheard of that people called off conflicts during like holidays and things like that. But I think that there was something about this one that was special because it was the fact that these people kind of all came together and interacted and mingled and bonded and told stories and sang songs and shared food and shared their stories with one another and things like that. There's a lot of accounts from British soldiers like writing to their parents, talking about like, oh hey mom, like was hanging out with a German lieutenant and I like stole a couple of his buttons, or like telling stories about the different things that they learned about the people in the other trench. So like I said, I don't know necessarily how widespread it was that maybe like people were meeting in the middle and hanging out and exchanging information with one another and things like that, but in that moment, they were all kind of working as a unit.
That's super cool.
And it's nice, and obviously the war goes on for a while longer, but like I said, in that moment they all kind of they all remembered like that we're all people. So yeah, I'm gonna try to find, like I said, I'm gonna try to find stories of like helpers, and I'm gonna try to find stories of people working together and things like that, because I think at the end of the day that's what we need to be reminded of during this mess. So
yeah, for sure. I feel like I've heard in several cases like the holidays, like even during war times, were pretty like quote sacred is the word I'm thinking in my head. I don't know if that's the most appropriate term, but like
Yeah, no, I
Because
mean,
wasn't
Sacred's right.
in the Revolutionary War for the United States, didn't George Washington basically say fuck that
Yeah,
and
that's when
totally
that's
absolutely destroyed a British camp on Christmas Eve or
yeah.
some shit?
That's the famous Washington crossing the Delaware.
Yeah. I
Was
couldn't remember.
was that moment?
Right.
Yeah. No, that's very true. Yeah, they would call off for like various like celebrations and things like that, and
Right.
I think the thing that makes this one like actually unique is the fact it's like they were they were hanging out and commingling and putting a name to that head you were shooting at, maybe even like 3 days ago. So
Right.
yeah, but yeah,
That's all
yeah,
I
so
got, man. I mean, it's super uplifting. I actually, I know we usually, usually the through line is, history's pretty fucked up, but I know deep in my heart of hearts that not everything is fucked, and there are
Sure.
moments like this one where it's like, oh, people aren't always super shitty to one another. It's, sometimes we have to find the right perspective.
Sadly, they're the stories that might not make it as far.
Sure.
Or last as long. But they're out there.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to dig a little deeper. And see what you can pull up from the earthworks. So
yeah.
But yeah, so that's gonna be it for me for the history section. Shall we do our call to action at the end there?
Yeah.
Hey Cody, if people listened to the show and they liked what they heard, how could they find out more information about us and who we are and things like that?
Well, if this is your first time here, welcome. We appreciate you listening to the podcast, and I'm sure if you're looking for more content from us, we have a huge backlog. So for all of those who are self-quarantining, is that the right word? Yeah. If you are social distancing and you need content, we've got it by the loads. And you can find all that at www.fandomroulette.com, where all of our episodes are, and little bios for us, and at the bottom, right before our social media links and where you can find us in other platforms, there's a little area where you can reach out to us if you'd like to, ask us questions about the things that we talked about in the history section or the other sections of the podcast, because we are a multifaceted podcast. We talk about a lot of things: history, video games, tabletop role-playing games, and just general pop culture media. So feel free to write to us if you have any questions or comments about what we're talking about there. And if you want to interact with us on Twitch, you can do so by going to fandomr_podcast. That is our Twitter handle. And if you're looking for other ways, say you weren't super thrilled about finding us on whatever platform you did, we are on tons of different platforms. We're on iTunes and SoundCloud, Google Play, all of those things. We're also on YouTube if you want to find us there. You can basically search wherever you want. If you just search Fandom Roulette, we will be there. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. If you like memes, our Instagram is usually chock full of them.
Hey there, kid. You like those memes?
Hey, kids. Hey, fellow kids. Do you like those memes? I do.
I'm turning around my chair backwards and sitting down on it.
Yeah. I'm gonna Riker this shit and stand over the chair.
Oh my god. Oh god.
Yeah, did you
Cody,
see that?
That chair back's so tall. How'd you do that?
See, here's the thing. I'm a ancestor of Riker.
Whoa.
Yeah.
This is an exclusive scoop.
Yeah. But yes, and if you are listening and you enjoy all the goofs, gags, and all this other stuff, you can help us out by sharing with your friends, reviewing, hitting the like button if you're on YouTube, the bell, smash it, all the things that can help us kind of expand our viewership would be greatly appreciated, and we appreciate those who listen.
Yeah. And thank you so much for listening.
Yeah.
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And yeah, we love hearing from you. And yeah, we're gonna keep rolling on. We're gonna keep having fun.
Yes.
And yeah, just keep coming to us for all that good nerd stuff.
Yeah.
I made that sound weird for some reason.
Well, I was gonna roll with it.
Sure. But thank you so much for listening to Fam Roulette. Signing off for Fam Roulette. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.